Welcome to Do or Die.
So from the age of 17 to sort of 20, in that 3-year period, I really started to, maybe started off at sort of 50 miles a week for a year, 65, and then 80. So by the time I was 20, I was running about 80 to 90 miles a week. I actually won all the Essex leagues when I was about 21, 22. And then from that, Eamon Martin is England team manager. I'm not sure if he still is now, but for cross country. And then I got picked for England for the first, my first sort of England best, you could say. Between 20 and 24, and obviously my 10K time, 29:40 on the road. My 5K was on the track actually at 14:10 at Watford. That was, I must have been, let's say, 24 or something like that. I'd like to say my whole running career up until now has been one big experiment. It's up until really last year where I've kind of got a system of training that I know that works for me, and that I respond well to.
So you've got to structure your training and your efforts in a way which sort of, it's got to be a gradual progression, because at your level, your PBs and stuff, it may be 20 seconds off here, 40 seconds at best, basically.
As you were saying, I'm probably in 5K, I might be 30 seconds away from the best I'm ever going to get. Do you know what I mean? 13:40 might be something I might eventually be able to do. 13:30 maybe.
Yeah.
For 30 seconds, it could take 2 or 3 years. Do you know what I mean? Seconds.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously, if you're a newbie runner or if you've been running a few years, you could take chunks off 30 seconds in about 2 weeks.
I want to go back to when I first met you again, because going back into your running and before we get into the coaching element, I know at that time you were getting advice. I don't know how much really it was a coaching thing or it was more of an advisory thing, but I know Steve Jones was giving you some sort of guidance as well and stuff. So how did that come about, and how did you find the methods and stuff with regards to what he gave you?
You need to run steady on your easy days. You know, never run snow, never jog or anything or recover. It's just steady. So to him, 6-minute miles, steady, and do sessions by feel. Do you know what I mean? Just do sessions by feel. So, you know, you should give me 2 or 3 hard interval sessions a week, and they were hard, basically, as hard as you can go. Quote from Jack Daniels, actually. He uses like an analogy of getting a basket full of eggs and throwing them against a brick wall. And then hoping it doesn't break. That, in my opinion, no disrespect to Steve Jones, but that is the type of training that he provides, you know, because it's a case of, for one of them eggs, it is the best training you've ever had in your life, and you'll probably run incredible time.
I've been working with Paul for coming up to a year now, and the main thing that I think I've learned is that you don't have to run hard, you don't have to run as fast as you can at all. If anything, I'm running at a much easier speed and much easier intensity than I ever used to. My majority of my runs, my easy runs, are way easier than I thought an easy run was. And even the sessions, the intervals, I previously thought you had to pretty much run flat out for that interval, but it's not like that. You run at a controlled pace that's worked out based on your current fitness, and you, from running that pace, it should be controlled, it should be comfortably hard, but you should be able to keep going, and that way you get the benefits with minimal stress. You're not killing yourself every session, but you're still improving.
How do you organize your time between those 3 elements to get the best out of all of them, if that makes sense?
I mean, to be honest, my life is very much online. It's very much like, you know, website updates. Obviously very much online and writing training plans and talking to people. You know, I live on WhatsApp. I'm on WhatsApp every 5 minutes of the day, which is I'll have to try and way of talking to people, but it's the only real way of getting in contact with people. I think that's I like giving people more of that personal touch of they can message me whenever they want, because that's, I think people sometimes need that. You know, different people need different amounts of communication, but I leave it a bit open so people can talk to me if they want to, you know, about what they need to do.
With the heart rate sort of stuff and the VDOT coaching approaches is what you use and stuff. So how did you kind of get into that? Is that through basically running experience, or is it just through studying?
Yeah, again, it's reading, it's studying, it's learning experiments on myself with heart rate stuff. It's buying a lactate meter. It's having like lab testing done on myself at different universities. You know, I mean, Colchester, ones in London. It's all that sort of stuff, just to kind of figure out a system and a way of giving training, basically. Try to get to a point where if anyone ever asks me a question on running, I know the answer. Do you know what I mean? I need to have that answer. So anything specifically on training or why we should do that, you need to have the answer. And I feel like I've got the kind of the knowledge in my head now to be able to answer any type of question. So So yeah, with regards to that sort of, I mean, it's just been reading, it's studying, it's looking back on how people trained years ago. You know, I spoke another person I was coached by, Ingrid Christensen. So she's a Norwegian runner. Who ran like 2:20 for the marathon. I was coached by her for a year, and I went out to Norway to have testing done, heart rate done with her in a like training facility at her house. So stuff like that, where I thought to myself, well, can I bring any of this type of training to a coach, and how can I mixture it? How can I put the mix in there where I can monitor paces, I can monitor obviously heart rate, match them things up, and and kind of just work out a kind of system to give people training to stay injury free, but then get the best benefits. You know what I mean?
So before we get into the coaching and the specifics of the principles and so forth, because obviously coaching is not just about telling someone what to do, it's also having the personal touch and monitoring basically and so forth. So let me just give you a scenario just at the top of my head. So if someone, for example, you've been coaching them for, I don't know, say 3 to 6 months, and they came with you with an initial goal of, say, look, Paul, I'm at 135 for the half now. I would love to get to 130 and stuff. And then maybe in the 6-month period, they've got to 132, 133 and whatever, and you believe that the training that you've been given them has been appropriate for their levels because you've done all the initial tests and so forth, but somewhere along the line they haven't reached that level. Now obviously you've got to make the decision whether it's a case where they may be doing things externally away from the training. That's you know? So how do you go on about that? How do you go on about approaching that? How would you deal with that?
Well, that is a huge point. I mean, because it's not only the training that I give people. You could have someone give you the best training in the world, but if you're getting 4 hours sleep a night, you're drinking every night, and you're not taking care of things like massage and a bit of yoga and all these things, then it's a thing. It's a sort of thing I'd have to bring up in a conversation. Do you know what I mean? I'd have to kind of ask them, you know, what is your thing? What is your, you know, the external things in your life, as you were saying, is that up to the level of the running? Basically, the more running you do, everything else has to come up to that level. Do you know what I mean? Everything comes up to that level. If things are dropped off, if you run 3 days a week, but then you want to run 4 days a week, 5 days a week, well, you've got to match up the running with the other, you know. So things like your nutrition has to be that bit better. Your strength training has to be that bit better. You know, your recovery has to be to that. So they're the sort of things really. So that's what I would say to that person. I would say, right, look, you're getting better. And to be quite honest, usually I can see the changes in their training with the heart rate data that I'm getting back anyway. Yeah. If there's something that's not, if they've kind of plateaued a little bit and they're not improving, it might mean I need to give them a slightly different stimulus. I might need to, you know, for example, increase their marathon heart rate run, their threshold run a little bit, or give them some mixed-paced intervals to give them a bit more variation in the train or something. Yeah. So I take care of that side of things. Then I also look at and I say, like you were saying, you know, check all the things in their life externally that you know, can they be better? In my opinion, there's no better way of controlling intensity than taking blood from a finger. I mean, you can't get any more scientific than that to produce levels that you can see and you can kind of monitor. So heart rate's one thing, but heart rate's very much affected by a lot of factors. Hydration, huge thing. Temperature. A lot of my athletes I talk to now are saying my heart rate's better and my pace has got better recently. That's because the temperature's dropped about 10 degrees. You know what I mean? It's been really cold. So, if you go up to 30 degrees, if we went 30 degrees the next 3 or 4 weeks, which we're not going to do, the pace and the heart rate would be slightly different. So, but lactate accumulation and lactate testing is like stable all the time. So it's like a stable reading, you could say. So what I do is with an athlete, I meet up with them. I give them a progressive heart rate test. So obviously they'd have their chest monitor on.
Yeah.
I'd give them something along the lines of 6 to 8 times 1K maybe, or something along them lines. I mean, you could do 800, 1200 miles, anything like that. And then what I would do is I'd give them progressive tests. So I'd pick certain paces based off of their ability right now, and then measure the lactate accumulation. So I'd take some blood from their finger after each interval. So obviously the paces are getting quicker through that interval. That's the key. The key thing is knowing what pace to start them at. So that's the thing you really need to research and understand, of what pace to start them at on the first interval. So for example, like me, for example, I'd say if I was to do that test right now, I would do 1K at maybe 6-minute pace per mile. I do the next K at 5:45, next K at 5:30, 5:15, 5 minutes. And you're kind of watching the accumulation. And there's certain numbers and there's certain lactate levels that people hold for different lengths of time. As I say, I do that progressive test. I get all the data back. I'd match up all the heart rates with the lactate levels that people are actually producing. So obviously with Garmin Connect and stuff like that, you can upload that instantly and I can check what pace they ran that interval, what heart rate that was, what lactate level that was, and then track it from there. So, and I've got graphs and tables and all this sort of stuff to work out their heart rates corresponding to them lactate levels. So that's one of the best ways to do it. There's not, rather than say to someone, pick 220 minus your age, here's your zones, or, what's your maximum heart rate, here's your zones. It's not quite as accurate. Do you know what I mean? So that's how I do things. And leading up to, and this is what I say, because my whole life, you could say, so far has been experiment on myself. And that's what led to earlier on in the year, running, like for myself, 14:09 for 5K in a time trial, 29:09 for 10K in a time trial, and 65:57, all within about a 3 to 4 week period, because I did months of testing leading up to that period. So I knew going into them time trials and races exactly what I was going to run. The weirdest thing on Strava, actually, someone said to me, I did a 5K run at my goal 10K pace. Wow. So I did 14:35, I think, or something like that, 14:37. And then this would be great if you could do this for a 10K. Like, that'd be great. No, I'll be able to do that. I'll be able to do it because I know. I did. The data has showed me I'll be able to do it. And next weekend, I ran 29:29.
It's the scientific element, the blood taken and data is given, and then you can prescribe training and monitor and assess things. So say, for example, someone abroad in Thailand, New Zealand, the States, or whatever, goes online, likes Paul Whittaker coaching, and they want to get on board, but obviously they can't do the blood test and whatever. What can you prescribe them with regards to?
That's what's happened recently, obviously, because of obviously lockdown and not being able to meet up with anyone. So there's specific runs that I give people just of experience that I need people to do. So a typical one actually is I don't give anyone this length of a marathon type run unless they're doing marathon training for a general person. But anyone can research this type of stuff. They talk about your 1 hour pace. Is a very good description of what your threshold pace would be. Do you know what I mean? That's in any fairly good running book. They talk about what's your 1 hour pace. So I could give someone, for example, a 60-minute time trial. I've even done it off of a lot of people where I've said, go and run a half marathon time trial, wear your heart rate monitor, and you might be 2 or 3 beats out, but you'll be very, very close when you're, especially in race conditions, or if they've got their racing vest on, the shoes on, that sort of stuff. They'll run their hardest, for that 1 hour or 1 hour 20 or 1 hour 30, give or take. It'll be not far off accurate in terms of what their threshold heart rate will be. Now I've got Then I've got obviously tables, graphs and things like that to be able to work out the other zones based off of that. So that's the sort of thing I would do, to work out, for example, if I couldn't actually meet up with them for the test. I've done both ways round. I've done it with a lactate meter, and I've done it the other way as well, just by giving them, and it's not that far off. Right. I just like things really, really precise. Like ideally, I would like to meet up with everyone for a lactate test, and and obviously I've got quite a list of people that actually want one when we actually come off this lockdown, and I'll meet up with them and actually give them a lactate test. But as long as it's like, for example, an easy heart rate, for example, you could say if I worked out your heart rate was 137 or an easy run, you do not need to go over 137. Well, if it was 140 for an easy run on average, it's not the end of the world.
Obviously, with any training approach, principle or application to athletes, there's going to be, I won't call it pros and cons, but there's going to be some skepticism basically with regards to any approach. Would you say, obviously you're going to be pro what you're doing and probably a bit biased, which is fine, but would you say that there are any potential drawbacks from an outsider's point of view with regards to this heart rate training, if there is any?
The drawback straight away is most people, I would say there's a big percentage of people that don't want to do it because they have to run slow to start with. I'm
running, as I say, at a much easier intensity than I ever was in any other training plan I followed. So I feel fresh, I feel comfortable. I'm putting in decent mileage every week, but I feel every week like I could do more. And I guess that's how you want to be, rather than feeling absolutely dead after every single week of training.
Say, for example, if you had a 4-hour marathon runner, man or lady, right? And that's 9:09 per mile, for an average for a marathon. Yeah. Now, if you look at someone that actually ran 4 hours for a marathon and you actually look at their training, I can guarantee they're not doing runs at 10:30 pace per mile. They're just not doing it. Yeah. Because what happens is you get your body, them sort of runners, they get themselves into a, you could say, intensity sort of rut, an intensity sort of kind of just problem. Because what happens is if you run very close to marathon pace, which obviously them runners would feel quite easy. If you talk to a 4-hour marathon runner and say, go out and run 9:20 pace, just a little bit slower than marathon pace, for a 10-15 mile run, they'd be able to do it no problem, because they train their body to constantly go out every run, and it's almost marathon pace or quicker every run. That's like me going out and asking me to run 5:30 pace 15 miles. That's not going to be that easy. Do you know what I mean? That's a proper session. I class that as a hard session to do. And I'd recover after the back of that. I'd have easy days and I'd recover and all this sort of stuff. They would class that as a normal run. Right. So that's the hard thing. So when I sort of, someone comes to me and they're a 4-hour marathon runner and I say, look, based off of the heart rate data, based off of the paces, you really should be running 10:30 pace or keeping your heart rate under this amount, or 140, 130, or whatever it was I worked out for them. They start running 11-minute miling. They've never run 11-minute miling in their life. And they're thinking to themselves, how the hell is 11-minute miling going to help me? Do you know what I mean? And that's what a lot of people think. They think, why is running slower going to help me? But, I like to give people my example of training, of what I do, because it relates. So, for example, my marathon pace, I'd like to think, is about 5:20 per mile. That's 2:20 for a marathon. That's the sort of thing I think I could do in the next months. Now, 5:20 per mile, I don't really run any quicker than 7-minute miles on my easy days. Right. So maybe most of the time it's 7:20. So that's 2 per mile, 2 minutes per mile slower than my marathon pace. So these going out and running 9-minute pace for a marathon. What should, do you know what I mean? There shouldn't be 9:30. That means they're training with more stress than I'm training. Why should they train? I'm training. You know what I mean? So that applies to 3-hour marathon runners as well. Running 6:50 for a marathon. Why should they really be running 7:30 on an easy day? It's not really proper recovery. Do you know what I mean? They might think it feels easy. But in terms of like the heart rate, the lactate levels they're producing on that specific run, it's not that easy. So, it's one of them things. Externally, it might feel easy, but internally, what's happening inside the body, it's not easy. People have to give it a bit of time. I usually say, and that's why with my coaching, really, I actually say there is like a minimum 3-month sign up, because there is no point saying, here's heart rate training, go and do this for 3 weeks, and you're going to see loads of changes. You will see, you start to see the odd change. And that's what then kind of grips people into the actual and believing in this type of method. As long as there's slight changes, they start believing. But then you'll start seeing huge changes. Within 3 months, you can change drastic things in runners. You can get huge PBs.
At what stage do you think that an athlete, whether at a very high level or just a club runner, should actually seek to get professional coaching, and what is the value of coaching as opposed to being self-coached?
I think it's having someone to talk to, having someone accountable to what you're doing. Do you know what I mean? I think that's a big key factor in it. I mean, because if you have something on paper and something to stick to, I think that can be really handy. I mean, especially with people. I mean, like a coach, obviously, they all have full-time jobs, and they have a certain amount of time for training. And that's why the last few months, I've actually, probably about 3 or 4 months ago, I switched my training round to just more time-based on that, just because of that, purely because I had so many people come back to me and say, like, look at the training, like, this is a really good session, but it's going to take about an hour and 15 minutes. Like, you got an hour. So I have to really think about what I can do in the training to give them the best training in that particular time frame. Do you know what I mean? So that's why I find giving someone training by minutes and working it out. Obviously, there's some people that want to train by miles and kilometers, and I do that, but it's just a way of training. I think it's just questioning the training that you're doing. That's all. I mean, if you're getting improvements and you're on a steady progression, then you might not need a coach.
I myself, I've been running for up to about 8 years now, and I've never been coached. But what I do take is advice from people like Paul. What I try to do is take that advice from a variety of sources and implement them in my own training approach. The first one is consistency. You also have to be patient with regards to results, because it doesn't come overnight, but in time, usually when you're not expecting it, you'll see those improvements come. Another factor I like to incorporate is you have to train at a variety of paces as well. Not just too fast, not just too slow. Sometimes in the middle, you got to change things up.